Hey guys, it's me, Gianna, your host of this podcast, The Hero's Journey, where we tell stories of hope, healing, and resilience. And today I am here to share my personal hero's journey story with you all, so stay tuned and thank you for listening.
Take us through the story. Where were you on your life journey before the life-changing event happened?
Well, I guess my hero's journey began when I left my home in Australia in 2009 to move to the United States. I was married for the first time, and that's what brought me out here in the first place. And I left everything I knew. I left my comfort zone. I left my family, who I love, my friends, like a really amazing life, actually. I left Sydney to be here and to come and get married, and it sounded so fun and exciting. I first moved to Las Vegas in 2009, and that was a huge wake-up call for me. It was really challenging, actually, to leave my nest. I didn't realize I was so homesick for a really long time. And then I moved to San Diego, which kind of made everything feel better. And I loved the energy of San Diego. I felt really at home here. But about 4 years into being married, I realized that wasn't the right path for me, and that this wasn't really the right relationship for me. And actually what I realized from there, that I had been living in this pattern of really unhealthy, toxic relationships, which led to my divorce when I turned 30. And that felt like my spiritual awakening, I guess you could say, started to happen. And I really started getting into yoga. I had done a yoga teacher training during that time of being married, and that's what really opened me up and led me on this spiritual journey. And from there, I learned, things like meditation, just living a really healthy lifestyle. And before that, I was a hairdresser, really living this busy lifestyle. I was a hairdresser for 18 years, and whilst doing hair, I started to move into the healing arts world, and I was training in things like Reiki, energy healing. I was going to Costa Rica and training under a mentor and learning things like essential oils and sound healing. I was doing a lot of deep inner work at the time with my mentor, and really starting to look into the reasons why I was living this unhealthy relationship, toxic relationships, and looking at my patterns and really looking into the deeper core woundings of my life and who I was and who I wanted to be. So in a nutshell, I was on this quest. I was on this spiritual journey after that divorce. It propelled me. It was kind of like the catalyst. So, I always say thank you for that first marriage, because it was the catalyst that drove me into healing myself, into understanding myself. And so that's where I was. I was in my 30s, and I was on this spiritual journey. I was on this quest for healing. Like, the deeper that I went into my own journey, the more I wanted to help other people, because I could see how this work, this deep inner work, was working. And I was starting to open up and heal and really understand myself at a much deeper level. So after my divorce, I decided not to move back to Australia. I was really on this healing quest, and I loved the work that I was doing out here. As I was being a hairdresser, I was also in this healing arts training, and I was starting to work with other people. I had always wanted to help people my whole entire life.
So what was the threshold you had to meet? What was the life-changing event?
I was around 32 years old, and I just knew that something really big was going to happen soon. I didn't know what it was, but I just had this sense and this feeling that something really profound was going to happen in my life soon. And leading up to the accident, I kept sensing that something didn't feel right. I was really, really busy. And I was working in the salon full time, and I was also doing the healing work, like on the side, doing Reiki. I was managing a healing arts studio. And that's really where my heart was. I wanted to move out of hairdressing and fully dedicate my whole life to the healing arts and to helping other people. So that's where I was. And leading up to this, things kept happening. I was driving a lot on the freeway. I had just moved from Ocean Beach up into Encinitas, and I was driving on the freeway every day, and my little car, I could feel it was just giving in. My sweet little Mitsubishi, I called her the Batmobile, because I had this like black little Eclipse, and we would zoom up and down the freeway. But I could just feel something was, I didn't feel safe on the freeway. I didn't feel safe with all this driving. And I kept getting signs, like, for example, my tire busted one night right as I was pulling into my driveway of my new home. And that meant that I couldn't, like, drive anywhere. I couldn't go to work until I got it fixed. And then I got it fixed, and all of a sudden, the next sign was I put the key in my ignition and it broke off in the ignition. So I had to like drive around with pliers for a few days until I got a new key. And so I'm telling these stories of these little signs leading up because there really was something there warning me that, you know, my intuition was right. You know, I was doing a lot of driving. I had really what the sign was there was slow down and listen, trust your intuition. Could there be times where I like didn't do this thing or didn't go there? I was in a yoga teacher training at the time. So I was driving back and forth. And there were times in me where I was like, I don't know if I should go to yoga teacher training tonight because I don't have the energy to. It's a lot of driving back and forth. And, you know, nothing could have prepared me for what was going to happen. I didn't know that these signs were actually leading to something, you know, really big. Otherwise, I obviously I would have stopped driving on that freeway. However, it was part of my life's path and part of my life's journey. And that day leading up to the accident, I truly did feel like something was not feeling right. I text my sister messages that day and my best friend Bob at the time, just that like I didn't want to be here anymore. Like this was getting really hard. Life was getting really challenging, and that I just wanted to be off with my angels. And I had sent messages like this. I actually was really, I don't know, something didn't feel right. And I thought that it was something that was within me. And I thought something was wrong with me. I didn't at all expect like something really traumatic and crazy is about to happen. But when I look back now, I had all of the signs and all of the feelings, and I guess, you know, I just had to experience that beforehand to remind me when I look back that, I am intuitive, and I did feel that something was about to happen in my life. And so it's a huge, huge sign of trust for myself. So before I got on the freeway that night, I had brought a sandwich to yoga teacher training, and I put it in the fridge of the yoga studio. I went to get in my car, and then I realized I haven't eaten anything tonight. Like, literally, that's where I was at in my life at that point. Like, I was forgetting to eat and stuff because I was so busy. So anyways, back to the sandwich. I had this sandwich. I put it in the fridge. And as I got in my car, I was like, I better feed myself tonight. Let me go get that sandwich. It was actually a wrap. And I got the wrap, and I got back in my car. And it was one of those sliding door moments, you guys, when you're like, what would have happened if she didn't go back and get the wrap? And this is the part for me where it's like, it was just meant to be. Like, this whole experience was meant to be part of my soul's contract. It was part of my life. And that's why I share the story of the wrap, because I went back for it. And what would have happened if I didn't go back for it? And again, these are parts of the healing that I had to, really sit with, these what ifs, Anyways, I get in my car and I head home. I get on the freeway. It's about a 35 to 40 minute drive. And I remember really everything from that night. Like, it was super foggy outside of my car. I could really barely see a few meters in front of me. And it was kind of really, it was around November, and it was kind of an eerie mood outside. And I even remember the music I was listening to. I was listening to this album by Matt Corby at the time. And so I even put this like eerie song on. And all of a sudden, I see headlights on the freeway coming towards me. And that was really, I really only had a couple of thoughts at that time, which was like, oh my goodness, that person's driving back or the wrong way. They must be really intoxicated. Like, that was the thoughts that came into my head. And before I could even, complete those thoughts, I just remember waking up in my car, but I was like blocking the whole entire freeway. I looked out my window, and now my car is like horizontal, blocking the whole 4 lanes of the freeway. And I could just see cars for miles down the freeway. And then I look in my car, and it was completely demolished. Like, my dashboard was sitting on my lap at this point. Car was on fire. Like, the front of my car was on fire. There were people around my car that I could hear screaming. And I realized at that point that the car that I saw coming towards me hit me, and that this was bad. And so I guess I was knocked out. I was concussed for a moment. So I'm taking all of this in as I am trying to gasp for my breath, because I was winded. So I couldn't breathe, and I was just trying to really catch my breath at this point and take in that this is bad. This is probably maybe the worst thing that could have ever happened in my life. And that realization was really fucking scary. So it was true. The guy the person that was driving towards me, yes, it was a guy. It was a young man that had hit me. And I didn't know at the time, but we did find out later on down the track when we got the police report that this young man was only 21 years old, and he was highly intoxicated with alcohol. And that he actually didn't make it through the accident. And so I realized at that time that my car was burning on fire. And so I, started to take everything in at this time. I realized, I looked down at my body and I realized that both of my legs were stuck. And that my arm was completely broken in half. So my forearm, my fingers were like dangling back, over near my elbow somewhere, and my legs were stuck. And, the first thing that I thought of was like to try to get the fuck out of there. But I realized that wasn't possible because my legs were stuck and my arm was fully broken. So taking all of this in at the time was really scary, and probably the most scariest moment I've ever experienced in my whole entire life. And so I started to hear this one man outside of my car asking me for my name. And, I really just barely only had enough breath to tell him my name, and he asked me how old I was. So I told him my age. I was 32 at the time. I was about to turn 33. It was my Christ year. I was excited. I thought something like really incredible was going to happen. And then I find myself in this car wreck, which is actually like my worst nightmare. So the man that's outside of my car was so lovely and so comforting to me. He kept calling me Gianna baby, it's okay. It's going to be okay. We're going to get you out of here, baby. And for some reason, like now that I think of that, I'm like, why is he calling me baby? But I guess, I don't know. It was really comforting for me at the time. And, he stayed with me, I guess, the whole time, talking to me and just reminding me that I'm going to be okay and I'm going to be safe. At that time, this was where I really started to leave my body, I guess, and go into a what I felt was like my higher self space, maybe the space that felt like I was with God or my angels. And so I just started to pray, and I started to pray and just ask, that I'd be okay. I wasn't ready to die. Like I fully felt like this was the time that I was going to die. And my car was burning on fire. So the front of my car was in full flames. I kept hearing the flames go up. And I thought that's how I was going to die. I thought I was just going to burn and die right there in my car. And so I really was begging and having this conversation with God, like, please don't let it be this way. And I wasn't ready. And I honestly felt like I got a response at that time. So it's like I was pulled out of my body and kind of lifted up into this higher space. I wasn't looking down at my body or anything like, those stories that you hear where they're like, yeah, I was looking down at myself. And it wasn't like that. It was just like I kind of went up a little. I no longer was in this traumatic car accident. I was now in this really safe space that felt like I really, truly was in the clouds with like my angels and God. And in this space, what they were showing me was like, you're gonna be okay. And they would show me a vision of me like getting pulled out of my car safely, placed on a stretcher, and taken to the nearest emergency. And so they just kept showing me that vision, like, you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay, you're going to get out of here, you're going to be placed on the table and taken to the ER. And I just kept seeing that vision. However, the flames kept getting bigger and bigger on my car, which would pull me out of that safe space back into this traumatic fucking mess of a nightmare car with my arm dangling back over here, my leg stuck, still trying to get me out. It felt like forever. And so I would come back and I'd be like, fuck, I don't know if I'm going to be okay. Like my car's literally burning on fire and I'm stuck. And I would go back into fear, immediate like panic and fear and anxiety. And as soon as I'd go into that fear and anxiety, my angels would pull me back up again to that safe space. And they would say, no, you're going to be okay. And again, show me the vision. You're going to get out of here. And they just kept replaying that. Finally, there was a man that showed up just randomly out of nowhere. He was a civilian who just happened to have a fire extinguisher in his truck. And he put my fire out of my car. And that was like a life-saving divine moment, because I could hear everybody outside of my car saying like, where's the fire? Where are the fire team? And I was like, yeah, where the fuck is the fire team? And then just randomly this man shows up out of nowhere. And so he's the one who saved my life. Realistically, he put the fire out. And then finally that when the fire was out, they could get me out of the car. And so thank you to that man. I don't know who you are. You never showed up on the police report, but like sincerely for years, I've literally wanted to say thank you to you. So maybe you're listening and I hope you are. So thank you. You literally saved my life. And just like, God, my angels had showed me in that higher up space that I was going to get out of the car safely, put on a stretcher, taken to the closest ER. That was literally exactly how it happened. So they had to cut the roof of my car with those big jaws of life scissors because the front of my car was just so jammed. None of the doors would open. So once the fire was out, they used the jaws of life. They covered me in this little blanket in my car so I didn't get the car shreds on me or whatever. And finally, my door unjammed. My feet unlocked from whatever they were stuck in, and I was safely taken out and placed on the stretcher table and taken to the ER, just like my angels had told me. So there's two parts to this story, and when I arrive at the hospital, I was placed in an immediate induced coma, because my injuries were so bad that they have to place you in this induced coma so that your brain doesn't swell or something like that. So I was placed in a coma for a week, which I actually didn't know that I was in a coma for a week, but I was. And this is kind of the next part of my story that was really profound. And this was where, the whole thing is a near-death experience, but what we call an NDE, which is where we go into another space and time. And while I was in that coma, I experienced this really profound place that I went to, where I was able to actually meet with my angels and my spirit guides and decide if I want to come back to my body on earth or not. So the space that I show up to it feels like Venice to me, Venice, Italy. And in this space, I knew that I had been in a really traumatic car accident because I was awake in the car and I remembered the whole thing. So I knew that I was really injured. I didn't know what my injuries were or anything in this space, but I knew that back on Earth, my body was not an abled body anymore. So in this space, I was healthy, and I took advantage of that because I knew that maybe I'm not going to be able to move my body in this way when I go back, or if I go back. So I took advantage and I started walking these grand canals of Venice. I was doing things like cartwheels and yoga poses because, again, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this again. So I was really taking advantage of this able-bodied in this space. And I was walking and walking, to me what felt like forever. It felt like days. And suddenly I was pulled up from these canals in Venice and pulled up into what felt like the galaxy in the sky, the cosmos. It was dark. There were stars and planets. And in this space was where I met with my spirit guides. There were 5 spirit guides that came towards me, and they were just little flickering lights. And at this time, I was even just a flickering little light. I no longer had a body. I was just kind of energy, if you will, energy and light. And they were energy and light as well. But as they formed, I started to see their wings, and I knew that they were angels. So there were these 5 huge, massive beings in front of me, and then there was one at either side. And the angel on my right side introduced himself as Archangel Michael, which was an archangel that I was familiar with, and I had actually had contact with this archangel prior when I was going through my divorce. I had an encounter with this archangel, and he came to me and told me, like, everything's going to be okay. I didn't realize what that meant at the time, but in reflecting and being with this archangel now, it all kind of made sense. And he explained that he has been my protector. He's been there protecting me my whole life, and that he will continue to protect me if I decide to come back to this lifetime. And the angel on my left was introduced to me as Archangel Raphael, and he introduced himself as the one who would help me heal, the one that would help me heal my heart, help me heal my body, my injuries as I moved through this. And the other 5 angels were my spirit guides. They didn't seem to have names. They seemed more very old, very wise. And they explained that they had actually been watching over me my entire life and guiding me. And they showed me kind of creating this lifetime for myself. They showed me choosing this lifetime, choosing my parents, choosing my siblings, and that this whole thing had been contracted or chosen in a way, that this accident would be part of the plan, and it would be part of the plan to help either propel me onto the next stages of this life in this lifetime, or to move on and to start over, to start a new life, a new contract, if you will. And they explained to me that I had the choice. This was my choice. Did I want to stay in this lifetime in the body that I have, the one that was injured, back down on earth, or was I ready to move on? It almost felt like a game. Okay, are you ready to move to the next level, or are you going to stay and complete this level? And that was a big deal. That was a big question. It felt like a lot of information at the time, and I don't think I was ready to decide. And so what happened was I went back down. I went back down to the canals in Venice, and I kept walking, and I kept doing cartwheels. And what I saw during that time was just kind of a reflection of my whole entire lifetime. It showed me, the times where I didn't feel good enough. It showed me the times where I didn't feel like I had a place in this world, where I was making mistakes maybe. And it showed me all the joy and all of the love. It was like this movie that was just playing out of my lifetime and just showing me who I was and what I came here to do, or my purpose in this life, and really showing me that I'd done a lot of work already in this lifetime, and to be able to continue it would only really be able to help other people, which truly was what I wanted to do. And that was my passion. And I kept going back up to them and asking them questions like, what happens if I don't go back? And they explain it's like a reset. You start again, the contract begins again, and you go into another life. You choose a whole new thing, like new parents, new siblings, or whatever. And we start this whole new thing, or we go back and we continue what we started here already. And for me, they explained that they would be there. They would continue to support, and that they would help me on that journey. And I don't really remember the choice or making a choice or anything like that, but I do remember waking up, starting to wake up, and I came back. I chose to come back, and the journey was to continue from there. And so that is what happened. That is the threshold. That was the threshold that I was met with on my hero's journey, was, on the outer level, being really physically injured and being really hurt from this, but also going even deeper into my divine awareness with my angels, and truly deciding that I did want to come back. And from this traumatic event, or whatever you want to call it, I like to call it a divine tragedy, because there are beautiful parts of it as well. But I decided to come back, and I think that was my MO. When I really reflect on it, I truly believe that my purpose was to come back and be able to work through this so that I could help other people that had been through something like this. And that was going to be a journey. I knew that at that time, upon awakening or waking up from that coma, which I thought was the next day, by the way, it was actually a week later. But I woke up thinking it was the next day, and the journey continues from there.
So obviously this would have profoundly changed your life. What was it like moving forward after something like this happens?
Well, it affected my life in the way of really everything, changing who I was as a person. I was severely injured. My right side of my body was completely broken. I had metal placed in my right leg. My right foot was completely crushed. My right arm also has titanium rod. My spine was fractured, and my colon was punctured. I couldn't walk or move my legs for months, so I was bedridden. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to breathe again. Even my throat was damaged. My vocal cords were damaged when I was placed in the emergency intubation. They put tubes down my throat, which actually damaged my right vocal cord. So I had to have speech therapy even when I woke up. And they had to put this like silicone injection in my right vocal cord so that my vocals would vibrate together again. I was missing half of my vocal cord. And, there are so many ways that my life was affected by this. I was, a very active, able-bodied person. I did yoga every day. I was a hairdresser. I used my hands. My right hand and arm were completely injured, and I wasn't able to do any of that stuff anymore. So how did it affect my life or change my life? My whole family flew out from Australia to be there and care for me. And my mom had to stay and live with me for 3 months to help me to be able to do things like go to the bathroom and take a shower and just like the natural things. And it was really, honestly, so challenging. My life was affected in so many different ways. I couldn't work anymore, so that was a scary position to be in, to think like my livelihood was going to work and making the money. If I didn't go to work, I didn't make any money. So, there was that aspect to it as well. There was just, so much unknown happening when I woke up from that coma. There was so much unknown happening for my family who flew all the way here from Australia. We have different laws in health insurance, like so much stuff that they didn't understand, so much stuff that they had to dig through. And it wasn't just affecting my life, it affected my whole family's life as well, and really put a hold on everything. It was really quite a traumatic event. This had never happened to anybody in our family before. None of us knew how to handle this. None of us knew, what to do about something like this. We were all just going through this really traumatic thing at the same time together. And, it affected everything. And I was no longer the person that I was before. I knew from this that my entire life was changed forever.
What would you say was the most challenging part about your story?
I think the most challenging part of my story, there are so many aspects to it, but if I had to narrow it down, the most challenging part, apart from the obvious, right, which was like learning to deal with these new injuries in my body, learning to be in pain for the first time. I had never experienced pain at that level, and now I was in like excruciating pain all over my body. So, the hardest part, if people ask me, is like the physical part. However, there's another part to healing, which is the inner part. It's like your heart. My heart was like completely broken and shattered. And then on top of that, I had PTSD, which I didn't know anything about. So I had to learn. The most challenging part for me was really learning that I had PTSD. I was so ashamed of that for some reason. I was so ashamed that I was having these PTSD flashbacks. And, because I'd done so much work on myself, I was like, but I really had to learn to be with that. And from PTSD came like severe anxiety and panic attacks, and like on a level that I'd never experienced before. So for me, I think the most challenging part of it was going through this new PTSD stuff in my brain and trying to understand like what the hell was happening. And things were happening to me like I would wake up in my bed completely saturated and drenched in sweat. Like, honestly, I thought that maybe I'd sleepwalked and gone and had a shower or something like that, because I was soaking wet. My entire bed was soaking wet. And it's these these PTSD sweats, night sweats that I was having, and I had to I had to change my sheets every single day from that. So that was like a part of PTSD that I had never experienced before. I was like, what is going on? And so a lot of what helped me move through this was my background in yoga, which was like using your breathing, like coming back to the most basic thing of all is being able to breathe through the panic attacks that I was having. And also one of the main things, which is what I tell people now that I work with when they have severe anxiety like that, one of the main keys to it is recognizing that that's what's happening and saying it out loud, like not giving it the power. And so I was constantly going back and forth, up and down of like, letting people know around me of like, okay, I'm having a full-blown panic attack right now. And, just being able to breathe through it and not holding it in, not hiding it, and really working with the shame that I felt around having PTSD and having this like mental health issue that I had never experienced before, that I really didn't know how to deal with. So I went to see, I actually, when I could fly back to Australia, which was, a few months later when I had the okay from my doctor to fly home, I found a really amazing trauma therapist in Australia that I worked with every week for about 2 months straight. I went there every week, and she did EMDR on the PTSD flashbacks I was having. There were these certain 2 main flashbacks that I was having about being trapped in my car, and we worked through a lot of that together with EMDR therapy, which was a lifesaver for me and for the trauma that I was experiencing. And also, I had a really, one thing that was amazing that helped me move through it was the community of people that were there that showed up for me, people that I never even expected. It was really crucial and so touching to see how many people were there, how many people wanted to help at that time. And so that was a really big key also that helped me to move through it, was the more that I reached out and shared my story with others, the more support that I was receiving. And I think that's really truly why I do the work that I do now. And the reason why I even wanted to start this podcast was because when we share our stories, we open up the hearts of other people and we learn that there is other support out there. And that was one of the things that really kept me moving through it. Another thing that really helped me to move through was really sitting with my body, noticing where I was feeling the pain and breathing through it. I would do this light work meditation every day. I would sit out in my yard and visualize the white light coming through every single one of my broken bones and healing, the white light wrapping around my bones and seeing the bones heal, and truly like making that connection from my brain to my body that it was safe for me to heal. But the healing took a long time. It was a process. And some of the times it was a process that I didn't particularly want to go through. It got really hard at times. It got really challenging at times. But I let myself cry. I let myself feel it. I let myself experience what I was going through, because one of the things I learned on my healing journey is that I was really good at repressing and holding things back. And, part of my story was that I'm just this strong person, and this accident truly humbled me. I had to ask for help. I had to show that I was vulnerable. I had to be this person that I was in order for me to tap in and to heal. And so that was one of the things that really kept me moving through it, was allowing myself to feel it, allowing myself not to repress it anymore, but to really dive into the challenging parts, the darkness. Like I was a shadow dweller at the time. I was really diving into the depths of the healing that needed to happen. And I really had no other choice. But those were a few of the main things that really helped me to move through that challenging PTSD time and the physical pain that I was feeling in my body.
What did you learn from this that you would want to share with others? What was the impact?
Well, there were many things that I learned from this accident, but if there were just some main gems that I would like to share with others would be that it's okay for us to be vulnerable as human beings. Like I shared with you, part of my story was that I had to be strong. And I think that's part of society's story, right? Just be strong, or you're strong, get through it or get over it, and I just want to say it's okay to be vulnerable. It's beautiful to be vulnerable, actually, and to express the way that you truly feel with your heart and your emotions. And through this was something that I really learned a lot of compassion with, is like allowing myself to be more vulnerable, to share, parts of my story that may help other people. And I encourage each of us to share your story, open up your heart in that way and be vulnerable, because that is where the medicine is. And so that definitely was one of them. But one of the other keys is like truly, and I know it sounds cliche, but it's like gratitude for our body. And if we are able-bodied, and I know like before I was in the accident, I didn't think of things like, oh, I get to like wake up in the middle of the night to go pee because I can, and my legs work and I can walk there. And there was a time in the accident where I couldn't do that. And I had to like sit on a bedside commode and be really humbled by the fact that my legs didn't work and that I couldn't go and just do those tiny little things, right? Like shower on my own, or the fact that we just can use our hands, or the fact that we have working legs, or just anything that with your body is like the fact that we can even breathe, is such a gift for us. And I really, truly think that I don't know that I was grateful for my body before the accident. I think I actually took it for granted. And so now every day I wake up and I feel gratitude for my feet, for my legs, for my knees, for my every single part of me, and remembering how much of a gift that is that we get to be here. And then I think one of the final things that I would say is like slowing down. Slowing down is key. And for me, I was living this really busy life where I wasn't slowing down. I wasn't stopping to smell the roses. And even though the signs were there, all of the signs were there, I wasn't listening. And it's not to say that I could have prevented this accident from happening at any time, but maybe I could have slowed down a little bit more to recognize that it wasn't good for me. I wasn't like in a healthy place by doing that. My mentality was like, the more I do, the more I receive or whatever. And I really truly see that differently now. It's like the less we do, the more we can slow down, rest our nervous systems so that we can actually hear what's happening in our bodies and our emotions in our hearts, so that we have time to process the day instead of like just jumping from one thing to the next. And, that was a huge lesson for me as well. And I see it a lot in the world. So I do want to share that, to slow down, take some breaths, truly like smell the roses, because roses are beautiful and they smell lovely. But no, on a serious note, that those would be the elixirs, that vulnerability, that heart-opening medicine, and truly just knowing that you're not alone out there. You are not alone, and your story matters. You what you have to say is truly important, and to share your story. Share your story, because there's somebody out there that's listening that needs to hear it, that you are helping. And open your heart to other people's stories, because you never know how you may relate to them. And so that would be my medicine.
Do you have any other last key messages you would like to share?
I think the last thing that I would want to say to anybody out there listening who has experienced something really scary or traumatic is that your trauma doesn't define you. You are a divine human being with great purpose here in the world, and you are a spirit warrior. Your story matters, and you have so many gifts in this world. So don't let your trauma define you. Don't let it hold you back. Instead, rise like the phoenix from the ashes and use it as your greatest tool and your greatest gift. And remember that you're helping somebody else out there as well.
Thank you for sharing your hero's journey with us today. How can people connect with you and work with you?
I have my healing and counseling business that you can connect with me through. I work with people specifically through trauma, grief, and relationship harmony. And you can connect with me through my website, which is just giannamauceri.com. And if you want to know more about my story through that journey, you can read it in my book, which is called Soul of a Spirit Warrior: A True Story of Healing, Survival, and Resilience. Otherwise, stay connected with me through social media, and all of my details will be on the links below. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for more incredible stories from amazing humans. We appreciate your support so much. Please subscribe, share this podcast with your favorite people, and consider giving us a 5-star review. Thank you so much. We love you.